was so proud of America.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Collapsitarian 15, otherwise known as the Free Rifleman. I invited him on to discuss gun control and the medical tyranny that we are facing. But first, go to all your podcast feeds, like, share, love, adore all of your favorite podcasters. And for all of your graphic design needs, go visit the website of that commie bastard, Ryan Bunting, at ryanbunting.com. ryanbunting.com for all of your graphic design needs. He designed my podcast logo and Pete Quinones' podcast logo for Free Man Beyond the Wall. ryanbunting.com for all of your commie graphic design needs. And as always, thank you, Tom Burton. For the music, it's always appreciated, and you are too.
All right, we are recording. What's going on, buddy?
Well, when you said you wanted to do this and talk about, wanted to talk about gun control, I was like, oh boy, it's going to get me in trouble.
Well, let's try not to get you in too much trouble.
No, I'm fine. Yeah, because, let's look and see, what are the latest bills or the latest this and or the latest that. And you know what I decided?
Oh.
It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. I'm not going to comply with any of it.
Right.
If I were to channel, and I have to do this, if I were to channel Alex Jones right now, it would be this.
The tyrants did it. Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
There we go. So it's been said. 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
Yeah, I heard a guy a couple of years ago, he had said that if the only time you are willing to arm yourself and resist the government is if they come to take your guns, then they don't need to come take your guns. But, what's changed in the last couple of years? And I'm looking at the medical tyranny they've rolled out onto the public here the last year. And I'm like, they have to be serious about this time. They can't be fucking around. So, when I first saw HR 127 rolled out by Sheila Jackson Lee, I was thinking, all right, so this is a big ask. And what they're going to do is they're going to go and they're going to look for a compromise. But the more radical and tyrannical this whole COVID situation becomes, the less likely I believe that they're going to actually roll any of it back, that there's not going to be any compromise, that they're going to do everything they can to force their will down our throats.
Yeah, I think that they are. Well, there's going to be a call made, and the call is either our bluff or theirs.
Yeah.
That's it. No matter how you try to look at it, there's only one way this is going to end up. And the thing is, there's not enough federal agents to do it.
Yeah.
They would need an army.
Yeah.
Well, and the United States Army is not big enough to do it.
I don't know what I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but before last year, I really never thought that it would be easy for the federal government to turn the military against the citizenry. But after watching how the police responded last year to the lockdowns and to the riots, and what laws they were willing to enforce and what they were willing to let go, I'm nervous about what the military will be willing to do.
Well, and the thing is that generationally, there's also a factor in this, and what that means is that as guys like me who leave the military, there's no guarantee that there are any more folks like us. I mean, and I can honestly tell you, I did everything I could to make the impact that I did while I was, spent my 15 years in the Army, and even the times that I've worked with the Army since. And it really comes down to we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think it boils down to how the local, the state legislatures are going to react. I saw when I was looking into all this, Texas actually brought forward legislation to the state legislation that Governor Abbott is actually pushing that makes Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary. And I had talked to Mike Meharry with the 10th Amendment Center about this quite a few times. And there's a lot of states doing this. So you're going to have not just the individuals resisting, but there's going to be states that are resisting this too. And in that Texas legislation, it even says any law passed after January 19th, 2021, in regards to gun control or gun accessories will not be enforced by Texas law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? We can do this at a personal level too, which is, people ask me, they're like, well, what level of gun control would you be willing to accept to the point where you say, okay, no, that's not it, and there's not any more. And I said, I'm already at that point.
Right.
There's no more backtracking. There's no more walking this back, drawing another line in the sand. There's nothing. I mean, I've got what I've got. I'm not going to sit and complain about not being able to buy another gun, but what I've got is what I've got. And at the end of the day, it's my threshold has been reached.
Right. Yeah.
Not saying I should have a threshold at all. Not saying that I'd even be willing to accept, NFA 34 or GCA, 68 or any of those things. But at the end of the day, they're done. It happened, right? You can't undo what they did without the legislation process. And so what I would say at this point is that there's no more. There's no more. There is no more gun control that will be accepted or followed from here on out.
Yeah. And one of the things I was thinking, as positive as it is to see some of these states stand up to the federal government in this manner, a lot like, we've seen states stand up to the federal government on drug use and immigration, all these different things, as positive as it is, that it still shows that Michael Malice has always been right when he says that conservatism is just progressivism driving the speed limit. They didn't say, okay, you know what? All this other previous gun regulations that you've passed in the past, if you go through with further gun regulations, we're not obeying any of it. You can take it all and shove it up your ass. No, they said anything passed after January 19th, 2021 is no longer, we're not going to follow. But anything prior to that, bump stock bans, anything else, we're perfectly fine with following those laws. We're perfectly fine with the federal background checks. We're perfectly fine with the gun law of, what was it, 1934, that didn't necessarily ban automatic weapons, but it made it extremely more difficult to get automatic weapons.
Yeah.
So they're perfectly fine with all that shit.
Right. You know, and the thing is, you know, GCA 68 and GCA 86. 86 was probably one of the more onerous ones, because what 1934 did was it said there's a tax stamp. What 86 did was it said no more tax stamp firearms can be made from here on out for the civilians.
Oh, okay. See, I thought the production stopped in the 30s as well. So thanks for
and that's how you have people that legally own M16s, but they pay a lot of money, because anything after 1986, if you have select fire or different things like that. Now that's not the case with suppressors, mind you. That's with registered machine guns is the words that they used. And so what that means is that no firearms after 86, and I don't remember exactly what the date is. I'm sure somebody out there probably knows it right off their head, but no more tax stamps would be authorized for machine guns after those dates. And so if you, like today, if you just got a wild hair and said, you know, I want a Mac 10. I always wanted a Mac 10 that's full auto. The only Mac 10 that you can buy is one that was manufactured prior to 86, with the tax stamp. And that's it. And so all these cool, newer firearms, the FN Scar and all that kind of stuff, you're not gonna be able to buy one of those, even if you were willing to pay the tax stamp, the $200, tax stamp. And that's the other funny thing is they made the $200 tax stamp. $200 was way more money than the firearm cost back in 34. And so, it was the equivalent probably of paying, $1,000 or $2,000 today. Actually probably even more than that, because $200 was more than most cost more than what most NFA items, that were created by that law cost the person to buy. So, you may have had a $75 shotgun and then, sawed it down and paid the $200 tax stamp, where today, it would be the $750 shotgun and a $2,000 tax stamp.
Right. Well, a good measure for that is you can look at what an ounce of gold in 1934 was $20 an ounce, and today it's like $2,000 an ounce.
Right. Exactly.
So you can assume it's at least 20 grand. 20 grand or something like that. But they never increased the price on that tax stamp, did they? It stayed at $200 the entire time.
Yeah, it has stayed at that $200. That's one of those things that people have always thought was going to come, was that they were going to add a zero on the back of the tax stamp. And that would be expensive if you were to, want to add anything else after that.
Right.
That would be a little pricey.
Well, yeah. But they through the 1986 Gun Act, whenever they stopped the production or the distribution of anything made after 1986, they basically did that, right? Because they created false scarcity, which
Yeah.
drove the price up. So what? It's going to cost you what, $10,000-$15,000 to buy a 1986 M16 or
Yeah.
some shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the going rate's somewhere between 10 and 12 the last time I looked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think, I don't know if you're involved in the 3D gun printing movement at all. What do you think this does to that movement? Do you think it pushes it over the edge?
Well, I'm a little less tech than a lot of the 3D gun printing guys. Although I admire a lot of the work that they do. A lot of it is small stuff, 9mm kind of things, because as you start getting up in some of the heavier, calibers, either from high pressures of 5.56 and then up, into 308 or any of the bigger stuff, that's where you start running into problems where if it's not something that's milled, heat treated, etc., then you're going to run into problems. So that's why you see, a lot of, maybe 22 stuff, but I did mostly what I see is 9mm stuff. And you know what? Kudos to them. I think it's great. I want to see 3D printed ammo. Personally, I would not mind seeing, 3D printed primers, stuff like that, especially with people having such a hard time finding primers. But
right.
Remember, all those items are controlled. It's controlled items to make primers. You have to have there's like a form. I can't remember what form it is if you want to be a manufacturer of ammunition. But to do that, in order to produce ammunition and sell it, you have to have so there's so many different aspects of control that are already there that most people don't realize, and if you reload, like, I reload, and I'm not a large scale reloader. There are guys out there that put out way more ammunition than what I do. But because I basically fall under a hobbyist. It's a hobby. I reload what I shoot, basically, and that's a hobby. Right. From the perspective of the the three letter agency, that is just, that's a hobbyist, and so it's not something that they actually look at and say, oh no, we need to get rid of these reloading presses from Dillon or from RCBS or different companies like that. It's not to that point, but I think that if it starts to get to that point, we've already lost the initiative in that regard.
Right.
I think that, yeah, I think, there's a short-term and there's a long-term problem here, right? So last year when people were saying, having a hard time finding ammo, boss, and a lot of people were saying, nah, I'm not paying that price. I'm going to wait for prices to come down. Well, a year later, I have not seen prices come down. I've seen prices go up.
Right.
And so my perspective is that the real market prices of ammunition didn't go up. They were artificially low. And when demands hit, AKA a whole bunch of people buying new guns, that was a part of it.
Yep.
Another part of it would be a whole bunch of people saying, oh shit, things are going wrong, I need to go buy ammo. Those two things are what drove the ammunition shortage of 2020. And the ammunition shortage of 2021, again, this does not mean that manufacturers out there aren't producing to the max that they can, because they are, but it's going to be years before we see, if nothing else happens, if no further gun control is threatened, if nothing happens, if Blantifa stops burning cities, you name it, right? Which, that looks like that's not going to happen, given the trial that's going on right now.
Yeah.
And so if nothing else happens right now, it could be years before we see prices come back down. And I'm not banking on any of that. I'm considering the fact that what I have is probably what I have, and maybe I'll come across more ammo as time allows, as money allows. But at this point, you could take your entire Biden bucks deposit that you get, if listeners actually get that. If they were to take their Biden bucks and go anywhere, they're not going to be able to buy enough ammo to spend all that money, or not really money, but fiat.
Right.
They can't find, there's no one place where you can find that much ammo. Say you got $1,400, you're not going to find a single place that's going to sell you. They might have that much ammo, but they're not going to sell you that much.
Right.
And certainly they're not going to do it if 20 more people were at the door with $1,400 in their hand. That is what you call a shortage.
Well, and some of that is the supply line. I mean, we've seen that for the last year, that we've had supply chain problems, and I'll be interviewing a guy about that here in a couple of weeks. But I've noticed that ever since, I guess I want to say it was November of 2019, I started noticing it was hard for me to find NATO ammo. And I live in a small town, so there's like a little local gun shop. And the only way I was able to get any 9mm ammunition for my wife's pistol was to call the guy on Wednesday and tell him to set a couple of boxes aside for me for Saturday when I got home, And
that was before the COVID nonsense.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just gotten even worse. I mean, I could call the guy every week, and it's a toss up whether or not he's got 9mm in that week. It's just crazy to see how broken the supply chain has gotten, especially being a truck driver out here and knowing how we're running. I'm running harder than I've run in probably 3 years,
Yeah.
So it's like, Jesus, man, what the hell's going on? And I was talking to my dad last weekend, and he said something about the price of ammunition, not being able to find ammunition. And I'm like, well, what do you got? And he told me what he has at the house. And I'm like, well, I know I can get this. Do you want me to get you some? Because I know a place out here while I'm driving. There's a truck stop that I go to in backwoods Louisiana where I can get, shotgun ammunition if you want shotgun ammunition. He's like, no, if I need more than what I have, then shit's already gone to hell anyway. I don't need to be here anymore. I'm like, well, fuck, I guess that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, that's, it's kind of a fatalist point of view, because for a couple reasons, and I'm not trying to call out a family member or anything like that.
No, you're fine.
It's kind of a fatalist outlook, and I understand it because, the years that I had left with my dad, the last couple of years, it started to be, his mindset was, I don't need more than the magazines I have loaded because I'm not going to last that long, and, physically debilitation, different things like that. He was starting to become a little bit more of an invalid. So I get that. I understand that. And it's sad. It's especially sad, because we are talking about family members, and,
right.
And, you think about it and you think, man, gosh, that's a terrible way to look at things. But, I understand it. I do. I understand it because, to a degree, that's kind of collapsitarian, right? I mean,
yeah.
Collapsitarian is literally, okay, I'm in it. I'm in it for the full ride. And, if the full ride ends up, taking this all the way to the end, then, that's what I signed up for. Right.
Right.
You know, it's kind of a fatalist way to look at it. You know, because you think, well, how else are you going to fix it? I mean, how is it going to be fixed? Right now, if the needle were moving, it's moving in the wrong direction and has been for a very, very long time for freedom. It's moving in the wrong direction. And
yeah, absolutely.
And I, you know, I think more people see it now than they probably saw it, 3-4 years ago when I started the whole Collapsitarian thing. And it was just simply because I realized that there was no political solution to where we are.
Yeah.
There just isn't. Because, say there's a politician in office right now that thinks exactly the same way we do. They must be holding their tongue really, really well, because otherwise you would hear about it.
Yeah.
And you would hear them try to basically bring them up for insurrection or some other charges or recall, or I don't know what other options they have, impeach a senator. I don't know what options they have, but the point is that, the reason why people like me don't run for office is because we realize that, it's not in our makeup. My personality is not to get along with others when they're doing something that I strongly disavow and disagree with. There is no get along with me. And so that's not going to fit in my makeup. You won't see me running for office and saying, I'm going to fix all this. And so that means that the people that are there for a different reason. They may think that they're going to fix things, but they're not going to fix things the way I would look at the problem and say, this is what we need to do to fix it. You guys ready? Roll up your sleeves, start the wood chipper, let's go. Right? That's not their outlook on how this thing needs to get fixed. And so that's kind of why I came up with that whole collapsitarian mindset, was because it's going to have to crumble, because doing what has to be done right now is too hard for everyone. It's just too damn hard. It's too hard of a decision. People are going to be walking away from their livelihoods, their investments, their life insurance, their health insurance for the family. I mean, it's expensive to live now. It is. It's expensive. And people do what they can to get by, to get their families by, to keep them healthy. Medicine is at the highest cost it probably has been in the history of this country. People don't want to lose their life insurance. They don't want to leave their spouses with nothing but bills and no money. And, maybe she was a stay-at-home mom and took care of the kids, and this is the thanks you give her, right? I mean, I'm just looking at this pragmatically,
right?
And so that's why things are not going to happen the way they need to happen to fix it. Right. That's why, and that's the whole collapsitarian mindset in a little bit more candid explanation than what you probably hear from me on Twitter. But really, what has to happen, there's only one other solution, and that is just simply that it collapses under its own weight. Maybe there'll be some monkey wrenching and some people that probably help it go along. But quite frankly, when you have people that just decide they want to spend, 2 point however many trillion dollars on, tearing one road out and putting another road in just simply because it's racist, because it services one population and not another part of the population. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah.
Up in New York. But I mean, I when you look at that, I don't need to monkey wrench this at all. At all. There's nothing I could do to possibly lay a wrench large enough to bring all of this down than someone who believes that we need to tear roads up and then put them back in an unracist way.
Right.
There is. So at this point, I mean, I think that the fate is sealed. We're on our way. The only thing that people can do now is probably more of what you knew you should have been doing all along, which is either getting more ammo, getting more magazines. If you can build a gun for your kids, do it. If you can buy a gun for your kids or buy all the parts and have somebody help you build the gun for your kids, they might be 10 or 12 years old. We have no idea how long this is going to go. You know, my father raised me thinking that the Second American Revolution was going to take place sometime if the Red Dawn scenario didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I was kind of raised under the mindset that it was either one or the other.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
you know, I think about like my dad's, you know, generation, and it's something I've talked to him about a lot. And he's even talked to guys his own age that he works with, and he straight up asked them, he's like, do you feel like we're more free today than we were when we were growing up? Is the country more free today than it was when we were growing up? And he said, to a man, every one of them says no. And you think about the way they were raised and what they were led to believe, that fatalist mentality that you know he hit me with this past weekend is kind of understandable, because they never believed it would get to this point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, yeah, because I think what happened is, you know, and I'm sure somewhere out there's a recording of this, you know, somewhere in the FBI headquarters or something. But really what happened is that they realized that all they had to do was wait out the generational freedom lovers.
Yeah.
And on one end, right? So that's like trimming on one end. And then all they would have to do is, you know, turn out a higher percentage of Marxists, leftists, socialists, communists, degenerates, whatever you want to, you know, whatever category you think that fits.
Yeah.
At a higher rate on the front end. And then what you've done is just you've now trimmed everything off of both ends. You know, either your future generations or your generations past. Right. And so they're waiting the I guess what you could say is left of the boomers. Right.
Yeah.
You know, they're waiting for them. You know, they were the, you know, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, take your hat off, son. You know, I mean, that was the generation. I know I was raised by that generation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're waiting that generation out, which means Generation X will be the only generation left. And the millennials were the beginning of the turn the Marxist dogma up in schools. And Gen Z was basically the cross between Marxist and degeneracy. So you basically have one generation.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, you know, not saying that all millennials are a waste of time, because they're not. I don't think that at all. But what I am saying is that the reason why some of the stereotypes exist is because they're probably right. Stereotypes don't become stereotypes without some validity to them.
Right. The only hope I see, and it might just be where I'm at, like just my kids. I have 5 kids and a granddaughter. So my eldest son is 21. My youngest is 16. So I have 5 kids all in that 5-year range. And all of them are very much like me, as far as freedom loving, agorist leaning, libertarian thinking kids, and all their friends are as well. So there may be hope that Generation Z has enough of those latchkey kid types that the Generation X raised, and kind of raised the same way we were raised. We're get out of the fucking house, come back when it's dark, and we'll feed you, type deal.
Yeah.
And so there might be enough of that ingrained in Gen Z to overcome what the scenario you're laying out.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's why I tell people, like, okay, you believe obviously that the Second Amendment has its purpose, right? And you honestly believe that you're opposed to gun control, and that if they were to come and say, okay, turn in your guns, at that point, that's exactly what that's actually for, right? That the Second Amendment is actually for preventing tyranny. I would say that it's also for being a little bit more, shall we say, initiated toward getting rid of it before it begins. But that being said, what I can see happening is that as Gen X, we'll lay it down by generation. As Gen X starts to get older, right? I turn 50 soon.
Yeah.
So as Gen X gets older, I think that as a generation, as you get older, you begin to depend more on help, assistance, whether it's medical assistance, whether it's I can't even trim my own tree anymore, or I can't dig a hole to plant a tree, my back's out, or I say that because I just planted a tree this yesterday.
I planted two a couple of weeks ago. I'll feel you.
Yeah, it hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Those holes are not easy.
No, I'm building a chicken coop, actually, a new chicken coop, because my old ones were dilapidated. So I was on the work end of a post hole digger for 2 days, and Jesus, man, I was so damn sore.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
really
say
does
you're
it
almost
and
50. I'm 40. I'm almost 42, and I'm already like, damn, I can already feel it.
Yeah. And the thing is if you throw in any kind of military or combat injuries or different things like that, then old is relative, because you can feel old in your 30s if you have enough injuries, right?
Yeah.
And you can actually feel pretty spry in your later years if you were able to avoid a lot of injuries. So there is a relative aspect to it. But what I will say is that for Gen X, my generation, there's a time window there, and then you have the millennial generation, and then you've got Gen Z. And so if you have the means, and I'm saying this for audience predominantly, but if the person has the means, and maybe their kids are just kind of lost in the wind, just out there flapping, is what we like to refer to in the airborne world.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't get them with their head on straight and looking at what's really happening right now, it doesn't mean they're always going to be like that. It could be 4 years, it could be 5 years, it could be one, depending on the situation, where all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, I see the light, what do I do?
Right.
This is what you can do to invest in their future. Because, if you if they're in that 17, 18 year phase of life, which I kind of went through with two of my sons, they will come around. And my thinking is, just put stuff back for them, because it might end up not being us. This thing may just languish and languish and languish on, and they they may just say, you know what, it's we don't really have to push gun control quickly. In the past, it's always been a slow boil, right? They just turn the water up just a little bit, and you have the average hunter that says, well, I don't have one of those their AR-15s, so I'm not too worried about this, right? Or I don't need a 30 round magazine to go deer hunting, so that I'm not too worried about it. And I've heard people like that, and it makes me sick. It really does, but okay, all right, let's look at it that way and say, if it continues down this nice quiet road, then it's going to be a generational fight, which means that you should put back for your kids' future if they have to go out and win their freedom back. Because that's really what it comes down to is, freedom has been taken. And while we exercise freedom, there's certain things you're just not going to hear from me on this podcast for a good reason.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't want to incriminate you. I wouldn't want to incriminate myself. I wouldn't want to, put the wrong idea in a young person's head that says that they need to go do something right now. Right. So there's certain things you're just not going to get that just aren't said. They're just things they're undertones, but they're just not said. We kind of dance around them a little, but we don't actually say them straight out. And so the way I look at it is, if they decide, and I say they, the proverbial they, the people, the people who run the world, the bee pigs, that they're so far removed from this problem that this is more of a local ruler problem, the Second Amendment thing. And I think that arms in the hands of Americans are the only thing that has prevented the world domination, global government, the whole shebang, all the terrible things you hear Alex Jones talk about. Just imagine the worst possible, Matrix type scenario, right? 1984 Matrix and George Orwell, all rolled into one gigantic, yummy roll, right? Well, the only thing that's prevented that to this point is armed Americans. That's it. Because this country is the last country to have not succumbed to gun control.
Yeah.
And when I say succumbed, I don't mean like, oh, we're going to vote harder next year. I mean, there are people that will not take another step backward. Not one.
Yeah.
In fact, there's probably people that have sworn oaths not to take another step backward. And right now they're being called terrorists.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Like the 3%ers and the oath keepers.
Right.
You know?
And God bless those guys, the Boogaloo Boys, the Black Panthers, all those guys that'll go out there and protest and march in front of capitals fully armed. I'm all with those guys. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like a big FU to any state, any politician that thinks that this is going to be easy to just roll out legislation and take people's guns. I mean, you can look at what happened in New York whenever they tried to pass legislation to do an AR-15 buyback. And I think out of like 3,000 AR-15s in the state of New York, they were able to collect like 20 or some shit like that. Yeah, people are just like, no, I'm not going to go along with this. I don't care what you say.
Yeah, the numbers don't look very promising for them right now. You know, it's not very promising for them. But my thinking is along the lines of it's sort of like watching a fight. If you ever watch like a boxing match or something like that, you'll see where somebody goes down in the first round
Mm-hmm.
and it's done and it's over with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch boxing or even, you know, certain MMA fights where it's round after round after round after round, and you see the one person's just kind of like, you know, I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm just going to wear you down.
Right.
And I kind of see this as like the latter, you know, and the thing is that I think it's two sides waiting each other out. You know, it's and the thing is, like I said before, I think that, you know, when you see, you know, how vile what they've done, that's just so disgusting and vile to what we used to call education, which is now just, you know, straight up indoctrination.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when I went to school, I remember doing book reports on books that came from the John Birch Society.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody like that if somebody in a high school or junior high wanted to do a book report, because, you know, sometimes you can pick your own book,
right?
Or you can say, well, I'm going to pick this book instead of that book as an alternate. And you know, sometimes you can get a buy-in from your teacher, or, you know, from your school administrator or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and you could cite all kinds of reasons. Like when I was in school, it was, you know, well, due to religious beliefs or religious reasons or whatever. You could use that and say, you know, I'm going to pick a different book,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to, you know, Johnny's not going to read this book. You know, this book has, you know, two dads in it. Well, that's not an option now. You know,
Yeah.
those are the that's the indoctrination part. You can't opt out of the indoctrination part of education anymore.
Right.
You know, there is no opting out other than homeschool. And I'm kind of surprised that they haven't really tried to reel that in more. I guess this whole thing with kids being home this last year has probably been good for them, quite frankly.
Probably.
Honestly, a year of no indoctrination. Now, it doesn't mean that the parents weren't sitting there watching TV and the indoctrination just came in through the television, because that's possible too. I
mean, there has been an increase of child suicide, which that I would say that's due to the isolationism, you know, and not allowing them to be out there socializing,
playing.
Yeah.
Doing
But
their thing.
But as far as the education goes, I'm with you. You know, it's a double-edged sword. And like you said, there's some of these parents just aren't engaged at all and don't care enough.
Well, you know, it might have been because their parents didn't care too.
Maybe.
You know, I mean, I know people who are like, oh, my father never talked about politics, or you know, that was never, you know, something that was allowed to talk at the table. And I just think to myself, I'm like, well, that's how we got here.
Yeah.
That's how we got here, is that, you know, parents didn't talk to their kids about this kind of stuff. And quite frankly, it could have just simply been they couldn't have been bothered themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like getting into the whole politics conversation of Republican versus Democrat.
Right.
I mean, it's not my favorite subject either. You know, and what I did was I tried to present my kids all the different sides of the argument so that they would have time to absorb the information and understand that it's actually more than just one or two agendas. There's actually a lot of things going on all at the same time. And hopefully they come around to that. Every now and then I hear something or I see something that disappoints me, but that's part of being a parent. Your kids, they'll disappoint you because, we disappointed our parents too. It's part of growing up. It's
Right.
part of life. It's part of free will, right?
Yeah.
Having free will, you're going to disappoint your parent. So I kind of look at it and I think, okay, well, but there's still room for them to come around. There were a couple years that my dad was worried about me. And he was concerned that I was going to get on the side of the Waco, Texas and the Ruby Ridge scenarios. They should have just given themselves up kind of thing. I'm sure there were times when he was kind of worried about that with me.
Yeah.
Different conversations, because I use those as touch points, because anybody who lived through that or grew up with that in their understanding of their worldview, they can see how you kind of have one side of the point of view and you have the other side of the point of view, but both sides aren't right. Only one can be right.
Right.
I mean, you can either have dangerous liberty where, people can, take their beliefs to a level that you aren't comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm trying to lay some things aside, things I've been told, that David Koresh, had participated in.
Right.
Such as children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I try to set that aside and think, oh no, that's just stuff that they drummed up. Or it could have been true. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's the point. No,
Well,
it's hard to find all the truth when it's all in a heap of ashes.
I'm talking to David Thibodeau tomorrow, who
Interesting.
survived Waco. And
Yeah.
I remember him being addressed about this, and I think he admitted, if I remember correctly, that there was one girl that David Koresh took as a bride, as his wife, that was 14, but it was with her parents' consent, and technically in the state of Texas at that time, that was not illegal.
Yeah.
So as disgusting as we may find it, and
yeah,
that there's still the idea that there was actually no law broken there. So, and it's not the jurisdiction of the ATF or the FBI to be dealing with.
Yeah.
So there's that in itself. Now, my mom went to high school with one of the ATF officers that lost his life. So I can kind of see the people on the other side too, and how they were lied into the whole scenario, and say, oh, okay, well, you were lied to. You were, basically brainwashed into believing this was happening, and you believed you were doing your due diligence, for the greater good or whatever. And so there's that aspect as well. And
sure, I look, I understand drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I understand it well, having been in the Army for 15 years, during it was kind of a weird time because, when I went in, we had the first Gulf War.
Mm.
That was within the first year of me being in.
Yeah.
And then by the time I was leaving, we had the invasion of Iraq. the second time, only
Right.
the Iraq, not trying to get them out of Kuwait, but the actual invasion of Iraq. And, you know, I remember sitting there, and I remember thinking to myself, you know, these Iraqis, they lived under, you know, a dictator of a sort, right?
Mhm.
And I remember thinking to myself, you know, but I mean, they all had AKs at home.
Yeah.
We don't even have that here in America. I mean, not like full auto AKs,
Right.
you know, like, I mean, they were real AKs, not something that, you know, has been, you know, modified to shoot incorrectly with only one round fired when the trigger's pulled, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, I think to myself, you know, okay, so how bad of a dictator was he? And I'm not even questioning the stories, you know, all the terrible things he did. I'm sure that probably most of those are, you know, I know enough of the Middle Eastern culture to realize that there's some bizarre shit that goes on there that Americans just don't understand. And
Mhm.
it's not my job to try to understand it. That's kind of why they live over there and I live here.
Right.
Right. And if I was really torn up about it and I felt like something should change, then maybe I'd just go over there and try to fix it myself.
Right.
Not make a war over it.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's kind of the voluntarist point of view.
Mhm.
You know, is that if you think that these people are crying for help and they need your help and you believe in it that much, and you can ask people to help you, but you can't make people do it.
Mhm.
You know, and
Yeah.
so I kind of understand the whole Kool-Aid drinking, you know, when we went in, and then, you know, seeing it firsthand and having the opportunity to make judgment on what exactly that had to do with 9/11 has disenfranchised a large number of people like me.
Mhm.
And so, not disenfranchised like disgruntled disenfranchised. I think what it's done is it's kind of removed the color of the lens that we look at the U.S. government with.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah. It makes you apathetic. You know, I was in basic training when 9/11 happened. So I had plenty of Kool-Aid drinking to do.
Yeah.
And then when you get out and you discover a Scott Horton and you start learning about all this stuff and all the details and the how blowback occurs and where it came from and how all of this started, you know, in the 50s, and you're looking at it and you're just like, what the hell, man? Why are these people dying? You know, there's no point in it. And
Yeah.
and you know, you were saying that if they keep going at this path, you know, the same boiling frog scenario towards gun control, and I think it all ties in. I mean, it's all authoritarian, if you ask me, whether it's at home or abroad. And when you look at it, it's almost like as the information age has kicked in, I don't know if they can afford to continue to turn the heat up slowly. It's the mask has been peeled off for so many people. So many of us can see what's happening. I mean, there are obviously, I mean, there's those neocon guys that Clint from Liberty Lockdown debated, and then Ace Arcus went on his show and trolled him for an hour, which was hilarious. You know, some of these guys supporting it even know what it is now. They are even willing to admit what it is. You know, they're more like an Irving Crystal than they are a George Bush, you know.
Yeah.
So it's really, are they willing to continue that slow roll, that slow boil, after how quickly they instilled totalitarian government on top of us with a hard flu?
Well, I think the presidential note sent to the three-letter agency about relooking certain things like arm braces.
Mhm.
I think that was probably an attempt to turn it up. But you know, there's a couple things that they're missing.
Yeah.
One is exactly how many people have bought one of those or similar.
Yeah,
items.
those are extremely popular. This isn't a bump stock that we're talking about. We're talking about,
right. Yeah.
yeah, we're
Just an arm
talking
brace.
about an arm brace, and there are lots of people that have bought those. I mean, those are really popular, especially for your higher caliber pistols.
I was going to say, truth be told, it makes a perfect house clearing weapon.
Yeah.
Perfect. You know, that 10.5 or that 11 or, you know, whatever. It's just long enough to maintain lethality at close range.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just short enough to get through the door faster than the next guy.
Right.
You know, and so, I mean, to me, I kind of look at it and I think, you know, and the truth is that I think that freedom has swollen a little bit in all of this, because I remember a time being the most pro 2A guy you'd ever talk to. And I've probably been that way my entire life. But I remember a time when I said, oh, no, I'm not going to build one of those pistols. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I can do everything I need with a rifle. I remember having that thought, that mindset.
Yeah,
I do. I remember having that mindset because there was a time when you couldn't really buy them. You had people make them, but you couldn't really buy them. There was no manufacturers that would just thumb their nose and say, we're going to make this. And then it was even better when a company, and, you know, some of this is technological advances,
mm-hmm.
you know, the material that the arm brace is made out of, you know, and how it kind of, you know, wraps around your wrist, you know, that nobody actually does.
Right.
But I mean, the point is that, you know, when the verdict was given that they would allow that, it was like, boom. It was like the first person taking a sledgehammer to the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Boom. There was no tearing that wall, or there was no keeping that wall up. And that's what's
there's
happened.
no going back after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about 3D printing. It's kind of like, I look at it, and with the development of the Ghost Gunner and 3D printing, to me, it's just like the argument's over, really. You're not going back.
Yeah.
You know, but no, you're
the only direction it's
right.
going now. The only direction it's going now is what other method can they use to control people? And I think that that's what we're looking at now. Is it's actually not gun control. It's a non-vaccine passport. It's a change to your DNA to allow you to have to allow you to travel.
Mm-hmm.
That's the method of control. I don't know if they skipped gun control altogether, or if they're going to continue to keep that pressure. And
I think it's a distraction.
Going to shift gears.
I think it's a distraction, and here's why I say that: because in February, HR 127 was in the headlines. You had the Daily Caller talking about it. You had the Blaze talking about it. Alex Jones was talking about it. I talked to Pete about it on my podcast. Pete talked to Matt Freeman about it on his podcast. And, you know, so it was in the news, like people were looking at it. But what did they do with it? They put it in committee and tabled it. And it's just been sitting there. Hadn't been voted on. It didn't get dropped. It didn't go away, but nobody's talking about it anymore because it's not in the headlines. It's not in the news. So, you know, I think they're distracting people with the vaccine passports, knowing that you have this, you know, crisis on the border, you have the vaccine passports, you have all this other stuff going on. It's you can't pay attention to every fucking thing, right?
Yeah, no, you can. Trust me, I watch my day disappear trying
to. No doubt. But you can't keep out. I mean, you know, like I do this podcast, and part of like what I take pride in is trying to keep track of what the hell's happening so that I can be somewhat coherent on the subjects I want to talk about on the podcast. And there are weeks that I'm just like, I can't, I'm experiencing overload. I can't even have a conversation because there's so much going on in my head all at the same time. Where COVID passports, ESG, yada, 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 yada. You know, it's just pop, pop, pop. And I can't keep my train of thought, you know, because I'm absorbing so much information. And so it's sensory overload, and it can kick your ass. But I think they do it intentionally so they can slip things by, right?
Yeah, it's information dominance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but HR 127 is in the House committee. It just hasn't been voted on. It's just sitting there in committee. It's been sitting there since March 5th, just sitting there doing nothing. And it's like, okay, let's not forget, guys, this was the bill that was encouraging your family members to turn you in for owning guns, owning firearms, if they thought you might have some sort of mental illness. So if you're a veteran and you've suffered from PTSD, you know, no matter how much therapy you've gotten, no matter how better you are, you know, how well you've gotten mentally, they want your family members to turn you in, right? This is like red flag laws on fucking steroids, you know?
Yeah.
And so I still, once a week, I do try to look and see what's going on with this House resolution. And then you got Joe Biden, like you're bringing up, trying to sign executive orders. You can't sign an executive order legally, right? So he's just trying to put that meme out there. He's trying to get that thought in the mind of the American people. So it's
and that brings up a whole different subject, which is, what does he even think right now?
I don't think.
I think
he's. I think
what he thinks. Yeah, I think what he thinks is in a bowl of oatmeal.
Right. Yeah, somebody else is doing it for him. I mean, I don't think he's thinking at all. You know, you see some of these press conferences where he's like, is that what I was supposed to say? Is this who am I giving this to? What do I do with this? And you're like, this guy has this is elderly abuse, right? I would never.
It is definitely, it definitely has that. It definitely, especially because so many of us laugh at him,
right?
You know, and I mean, it's sad if it were our grandfather that were in that position, we would be angry. But the point is that his family is a crime family. They are a crime syndicate, and I can't feel bad for him in that situation at all. Yeah. I just can't.
Yeah, no.
Even though it's sad, I feel if it were anybody else, I'd feel bad for him.
Yeah, usually I'll watch a video like with him falling up the stairs or whatever it is. I'll watch it and I'll just crack up laughing for about an hour, and then then I'm done laughing at it, and I'm like, God, this is fucking abuse, man. Like you can't do this to people, you know. And but I was saying that whenever they had him up there campaigning. I was like, this guy has no clue where the fuck he's at. you know? And
No, he doesn't.
It's really, like you said, it'd be sad. Well, it is sad, but at the same time, you're kind of like, you fucking people are so fucking power hungry. You're willing to do anything to get power, even abuse your own family members, you know?
Well, listen to any time that a reporter asks Kamala Harris anything to do with, you know, like the poor children in cages down at the border, or this or that or this or that. Listen to her evil fucking cackling laugh.
Oh God, I know.
I mean, it's almost like she can't help herself but enjoy other people's
misery,
you know, plights and misery. Yeah. I mean, it's just disgusting. You hear it and you're just like, and you know, this is what I keep thinking. I'm like, maybe some of these reporters will actually, maybe they'll actually see the light. You know, all the ones that basically got us here. Because let's face it, it wasn't Joe Biden that got us here. No,
right.
It was a combination of, you know, flawed voting processes, you know, a fake pandemic or plandemic that ushered in, you know, mail-in voting. I mean, the list is just, it's longer than what I feel like if I tried to say everything on the list, I'd feel bad because I'd forget something. But the list is long and distinguished, right?
Right.
But that's what got us here. And what we're looking at is a comedy of errors as to how we got here. But the press were part of that, because it did not matter what Donald Trump said. He was a Nazi.
Right.
It didn't matter what he said.
Right.
Because they had already decided it. You know, I mean, now you've got under the Biden administration, you got, you know, thousands and thousands of kids in cages where Trump said, you know, at no point will there ever be any more than this many, right? And I mean, it's ridiculous. It's disgusting. I can't say that I have an inside view on what's going on, because that might actually put people I know and love in jeopardy. But I'm here to tell you, it's bad. Yep. It is really, really bad. It's so bad I don't even comment on it when I post you know, things on Twitter, and I'm like, I have an inside view on this that's actually worse than the story I'm sharing, but I'm just gonna put it up there with no comment, because otherwise I might end up getting somebody in trouble.
Yeah. You know? I don't know if you know who Josh Childress is. He's been on Pete's podcast. He was also on Unregistered. All right, so he's a buddy of mine, and I had him on last week, and we were talking about what's going on the border, right? And when he came on, we're talking about it, and he's like, yeah, I'm not seeing anything from the videos I'm able to find from what Project Veritas has released. I'm not seeing anything I didn't see when I worked for Border Patrol. And then the other day, Project Veritas released that video of all the kids up under the overpass in like sleeping in the dirt. And so I sent that to him. I was like, hey man, this is fucking horrible, dude. Did you see this? And he messaged me back. He's like, dude, I saw some fucked up shit when I was with Border Patrol. I never saw anything that fucked up. I mean, was that?
I was apologizing because I went to put my earbuds away and it cut off your audio in the middle of it, and I apologize.
Oh no,
I did not think about that happening.
That's okay.
So what you were saying that his comment was what?
I sent him that video from Project Veritas with all those kids sleeping under the overpass that just came out. I sent that to him earlier this week when I saw it came out, and he was like, dude, I never saw anything that bad when I was with Border Patrol. It's almost like he almost felt like we should redo the podcast, you know, to an extent, I think, because like we're talking like, okay, this all looks normal. This all looks like what he saw in 2012, 2014. It all looks pretty much the same. You know, he was saying, yeah, these facilities, that's what I saw, blah, blah, blah. But I sent him that that video of those kids under the overpass, he's like, okay, that's fucked up. You know, that's one step too far.
Yeah. So being that I have such a unique view of being both very involved in, shooting competitively and shooting with law enforcement, training with law enforcement, working security, being in classes with federal agents to the left of me and to the right of me, all those types of things, right? Mm-hmm. And still yet having my point of view, as an abolitionist or, as a voluntarist, right? Uh-huh. And so, for me, and the ANCAP, I usually people find ANCAP more appealing. Because they're because they like the free market idea, right?
Right.
They like the free market idea, and so like I can start conversations sometimes with that, but lately anything anarcho is completely destroyed after this last year. Just using the word, you're backwards in the starting blocks if you start about anything anarchy anymore with conversations with people.
Right.
I've noticed that. I've noticed it. And I mean, it was kind of bad before, but it's way bad now.
Really?
Oh yeah. You just can't have conversations with people like that because they honestly believe, people honestly believe that what is happening in Seattle and Portland is anarchy. They actually believe that. And I asked them, I said, so just hypothetical, what how do you think that communist revolutions start? Do you think they actually start with people saying, yeah, we don't want government? Or do you think they start with people that are disgruntled about the government existing and they get all these stupid hipsters to sign on to something that's not really true and then turn into the movement that you now see with Antifa and BLM, or as one of my friends likes to call them, Blantifa.
I like that. You said it earlier. I like that.
Yeah, Blantifa. I'm just like that's it right there. It's like throw that in there, maybe a little Muslim Brotherhood, maybe a little bit of Islamic State, because there are loose affiliations going on. Mm-hmm. There are loose affiliations, and it's kind of funny because like I've never actually been accused of being a white supremacist ever, right?
Yeah.
And this year, I'm like, gosh, I don't know. I mean, what does a white supremacist really believe that they aren't actually the antithesis of already? Yeah. Meaning they literally want to destroy a race and a culture, or just they'll be happy enough just to destroy the culture. But a lot of the culture and the race are like kind of cross-identifying, and they literally want to destroy that and then have the nerve to actually call people that oppose it the exact antithesis of what it is that they're doing, which I have actually come to the conclusion that they will tell you what they're doing by what they say their enemy is doing. Like from here on out, I think I've broken the code. Everything they do is 100% projection.
It's that Saul Alinsky move.
Yes. Yep. It's 100% projection. So whatever they're saying, like during the I can't even say that it was a race for 2020. Like that wasn't really Like, there even an election? I don't think there was. Like, I mean, literally,
I don't blame you for thinking
No.
that.
No,
I can't prove the opposite.
No. And but what I noticed is that everything that they claimed Trump was doing,
They were doing.
they were literally telegraphing what it was that they were doing.
Yep.
Like, everything. It was almost textbook.
Mhm.
You know, like you could almost count on it. The second that they said it, you knew that was actually what they were in fact doing at the time.
Well, I mean, you look at the Russian collusion, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, and their ties with the Ukraine and the ties with China, and you know, it's like, oh, okay, you're doing that. You're just doing that in a different country. You know, the Clinton Foundation taking millions of dollars from Saudi Arabia, you know, things like that. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're telling us what you're doing. That's what you're doing. You're just telling us what you're doing. You know, so yeah, no, you're right. I mean, but it goes with it goes so far in that direction, and I think that's why I say it feels this time with the gun control, it feels like they're actually serious. It really does, because there's so many of us out here speaking out. There's so much information flying around, and we're reaching so many people that they can't fight it informationally anymore. They're going to have to get, violent with us to shut us up.
Yeah. Their mistake was not going slow.
Yeah, exactly.
Their mistake was not allowing Fox News to continue to flounder and destroy the Republican Party the way it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, they fucked up. They fucked up with that whole Pied Piper strategy by propping up Donald Trump. They fucked up there, you know, and they rightfully admit that. Well, we're partially to blame because we were showing a empty Donald Trump podium for an hour while Bernie Sanders was speaking, or whatever, and so it's like, yeah, y'all fucked up, and now you're paying the price, and now anybody who's right of Mao is considered an insurrectionist. And it's like, I was never even a Donald Trump supporter, but I found myself for 4 years defending a man I didn't even really care for, because everything that was bad, everything they would say about him was fucking wrong. It's like, that's not what fucking happened.
Yeah. I want to add to that. I didn't vote for him the first time, but defensively, I canceled out votes for him this last time. Like, defensively.
Yeah.
Because by the time this last election came around, I had people that were literally like, I can't believe that, this and this and this, because they're all riled up and everything. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to go vote to cancel out your vote. That literally, I'm making it personal. Yours. I want to cancel yours out, and I'm going to get somebody else to go vote and cancel yours out too, and so we'll just play a numbers game here at this point. So that was his second run, right?
Right.
Well, during the year, I was probably about 50 down the line about things that I was like, well, that's actually pretty good, but this isn't good. He's messing with the markets, and he shouldn't be, because, I'm a laissez-faire, free market person. I don't believe that government should interfere in the markets. And he did that a lot. He did it a lot. Now I'm not saying that the reason why he wasn't doing it wasn't because he meant well, but let's face it, that's not the definition of laissez-faire. As well, if you mean well, then it's okay, right? That's not what that means. That means hands off. So to me, this is what I think. I think we're at a point where you have so many technocracy leftists.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use the word leftist. I can use the word Marxists, whatever they are, right? I mean, you hate to, label them wrong, but I mean, in the end, that's essentially their ideology, right? Is the Alinsky Marxist, belief system, right? So, so if it, but you got the Bezos and the, from Amazon, and you've got Jack Dorsey from Twitter, and you've got freaking Data from Facebook, right? Doesn't he look like Data?
He does.
You got Data from Facebook, and you've got all these conglomerates, and Google and Microsoft and freaking, oh my gosh, I watched Stephen Corbett's who is, let me see, I've got to bring it up. I got to make sure. There it is. Full documentary. Who is Bill Gates? Full documentary. Really Corbett Report extras. They took 4 sub reports and put them all together into one gigantic one. Apparently, this is new information to some people that they weren't aware of it, and I'm hearing it coming out in more and more podcasts. I was listening to Matt Bracken this morning. They're usually on Sundays, but I don't always get to it, right away because I get kind of busy on the weekends. Yeah. And so I was listening to it this morning, and he was referencing. I was like, "Yes, that's awesome." He's listening to Stephen Corbett, from Corbett Report. So I was like, "That's awesome." But yeah, who is Bill Gates? And I mean, they did a really good job of giving a lot different point of view on maybe what Bill Gates' motives are that haven't been considered in the past. And this is another thing that came out I thought was really interesting. Now, my background, I know Mike Flynn, General Flynn, right? I knew him as an officer when he was a field grade officer, not a general officer. He was a great guy. Seriously great. Like a good guy. Yeah. Like I would put money on him as not having done anything wrong. I bet he's not even jaywalked,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, seriously, I mean, he's a straight up boy. He's a Boy Scout. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that as in like he sticks to his word, does what he says, all that kind of stuff. Right.
Right.
And he came out on a video and published a video, and I can't remember which show it was on, but I get snippets of it because I subscribe to one of his sub channels on the back end, right? Mm-hmm. And so I get different things that he says that actually are coming from him, not from people who claim to be him. I mean, this is actually him in the video, right?
Yeah.
And so, he's basically talking about these different videos that Alex Jones did. And he was like, and you guys have got to watch this. I mean, he was like coming down, like, they've said all these bad things about Alex Jones. They've said this, they've said that, they've tried to ruin his name, but he did all this work and put all this effort into this documentary that I guess he released on Saturday that was really good. And I thought, okay, all right, you know what? People.
Oh, that was the SPARS 2025 to 2028. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yes. Yeah. And this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, you know what? It took everybody getting really uncomfortable to start waking the fuck up.
Right.
Because there are people right now that are like, what just happened? Where we've kind of been calling this all along the way, that we knew that this was only going to go in one direction, and it was going to be an authoritarian one.
Right.
Because you never let a crisis go to waste, right? That's Absolutely. Also Saul Alinsky.
Yes, it is.
And so we've been calling this all along. And I remember when people were like, oh, there's no virus, it's not a virus. And my concern all along was it's not about the damn virus. It's about how people are going to react and what the government is going to do with it.
Yep.
It was always going to be that. And so, here we are. And, I know we were talking about gun control, but
That's okay.
oh, and then those damn vaccines. First off, it's not a vaccine. It's not. It's a gene therapy.
Yep.
That's it. That's all it is. It's a gene therapy.
There was I found an article. I'll send it to you. I also have that SPARS 2025 to 2028 document saved on my phone if you want me to send it to you. But let me find this document, this article written. It was about a TED talk that the CEO of Moderna gave in 2017. See, I sent it to my dad. Where's my dad? I know he's on here. I just talked to him. Shit, I'll have to find it. But he's talking about how mRNA is basically a new technology that views you as a program that it enters your body to reprogram you. And so that's, this is, like I said, it's a TED talk. He's admitting this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just matter of factly, there it is. Matter of factly, just bringing it up like it's nothing. And I was like, well, okay, so why has this not gotten more traction? Why aren't we hearing about this? Why aren't people talking about this? But it was written by, I'm trying to find the article right now. It was written by a guy named Lohman. I'd never heard of him before, but I subscribed to Technocracy News,
Okay.
Patrick Wood's site, and it came through on his newsletter a couple of weeks ago. I'm not finding it right now. I'll send it to you though. I'll make sure I send it to you. And yeah, but it's talking all about the mRNA technology being used to reprogram your cells and your genealogy to basically like you're a program, like you're a computer program. And it's just really creepy shit. When you hear some of these people's plans, the way they look at things. You can go back, you can read Zbigniew Brzezinski, Between Two Ages. There's so much out there. Cecil Rhodes wrote about shit like this. There's so much out there. And when you bring it up, people are like, oh, you're a conspiracy theory. But even if you share that Time article where they basically admit they rigged the election, you're a conspiracy theorist. But I'm just sharing a fucking article, man. I didn't write the damn article.
Right. Yeah. No, what they see it as is that if you are not down with the narrative, then you're obviously the enemy. And who would have thought that there would be a word for a person that had so much vile and vitriol in it than conspiracy theorist? Who would have thought that anything could have been more nothing could be more damaging to your name and your reputation than being called a conspiracy theorist.
No, you can thank the CIA for that.
That is social engineering, in a very large sense.
Yeah,
because it's global. It's global. That's not just a U.S. national thing. That's everywhere.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I found it. It's right here. Moderna's top scientists, we are actually hacking the software of life.
Yeah.
Dr. Tal Zaks, the chief medical officer at Moderna Incorporated, explained in a 2017 TED Talk how the company's mRNA vaccine was designed to work. Over the last 30 years, he said, we've been living this phenomenal digital scientific revolution. And I'm here today to tell you that we are actually hacking the software of life and that it's changing the way we think about prevention and treatment of disease.
And when I think I remember reading that back then, and I think I remember replying to a story like that, or maybe like a quote of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember putting a GIF in the section, and it was something like World War Z.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna fuck around with nature, and they're gonna find out that it's not that controllable.
Right.
That something is not gonna work, and it's gonna go sideways. And I'm sure that 100 years from now, our recording of our discussion here, somebody will be like, "Oh my gosh, they predicted the," But I mean, seriously, they are going to fuck around, and they are going to find out.
Yeah.
You cannot fuck with nature. You just cannot. And when people do, there's all kinds of shit that you gotta that end up coming down the pike.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's gonna be, a World War Z, but I guess if it were, that might help reset things too.
One of my favorite memes is the one that goes around that says, "I was promised a zombie apocalypse. This virus sucks."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but hey, we've been going about an hour and a half. I need to get my dog out. I haven't taken him out yet. So,
okay. Yeah.
You got anything you want to plug, or any last thoughts you want to cover?
No, I think we hit it all. I mean, I apologize. This time I didn't have any notes, anything I wanted. I didn't have a written agenda, nothing. I literally just wanted to have a conversation with you. And I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's typically what I do is I just usually talk. I mean, I kind of have an idea. I just did one with Thaddeus Russell a couple of weeks ago, and I had this like whole idea of what I wanted to talk about. And I think we hit one bullet point out of everything I had like in my head. Like, so I don't mind that. Like, I like the conversations to go naturally where they go, man. And the listeners appreciate it too.
Yeah, no, this was good. And, definitely, I don't want to keep you. I had a good time. I think this is our first podcast together. So
yeah, we'll do it again.
It was good.
Said you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you waved just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone. They demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Well, as we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel, it seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumbs down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names. It seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. Well, it's time to change the channel. It's time to set things right. Make them all rot with fear in their beds at night. Devour all their worthless souls and sacrificial right, just like we should. Of those who are to blame, and we'll stack them up like cordwood, watch them sizzle on the flames for good. Well, as we all just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood, our liberty will never be until our right to freedom is understood.